Okay.
Okay,
In
here we go.
3, 2, 1. Hi, guys. Welcome back to CCN Coastal Conservative News. For our next segment, our guest interview segment, we have a wonderful guest, Mike Levine. He joins us from right here in Florida. Mike, welcome to CCN.
Well, it's great to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Thanks for joining us. And I have to start as somebody who I ran for office at one time, too. I have to thank you for all that you do because we really rely heavily on people like yourself to be in there as sort of an internal Floridian whistleblower who helps us to understand legislation, what's going on even within our own political party. So I'm so excited to have you here today. But can you give our viewers a little bit of backstory on, because you did run for office, I want to make sure that they know how long you've been in this and how long you've been at this.
Right. Thank you very much. Well, I'm a business person. I'm a real estate broker, and I have a background in hospitality. I grew up in Orlando, so I've been in business a long time, and I'm a realtor, and I served on the board of directors of the Florida Realtors for 12 years. I'm a past president of two different realtor associations here in Florida, and the realtor organization is a very political organization.
Yeah.
And there became a time as I was rising up through the leadership ranks that it just became clear to me and them that my value proposition was inconsistent with a lot of the public policy initiatives that the realtors were advancing and continue to advance. So we just had a little sit down, and I offered them that I would step out of leadership at Florida Realtors and I would do my politics locally. So I eventually became the chairman of the Lake County Republican Executive Committee, which gave me quite a bit of access to obviously I'm going to quarterly meetings at the Republican Party of Florida and interacting with the Republican Party of Florida. And I'm just a believer that all Americans, it's our responsibility to be engaged in the civics of our communities. And the reason that we get challenged with government is because, an old friend of mine used to tell me that if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. And that's very true. So I would suggest that all institutions have a culture, and the culture of government is to lavishly spend other people's money. So with that, I'll just toss it back to you and see if you have any further, if there's anything more specific that I can give you.
Well, what I love about this, Mike, is that you kind of saw behind the veil, right? By being able to be at the table for the Republican Party of Florida and as an REC chair, you've actually used it to do good things, but not every county can say that. I know here in Sarasota County, we've had some issues. So I do want to know a little bit more about what you think that culture is like in the Republican Party of Florida, and how did it affect you as somebody who then decided to run for office? I mean, were you welcomed with open arms? Or
quite the opposite, actually. And this is another major component, and from my perspective, I'm surprised that everybody doesn't really get it. But government, take a look at your government budgets. I think the state of Florida has a $125 billion budget. I checked with my county commissioners and the school board here in Lake County. I think both of those institutions run about $850 million a year. So that's a $1.7 billion budget just for the school board and the county commission. And that doesn't include the taxing authorities that are the 14 cities in Lake County. Plus there are other taxing authorities in the state of Florida and in Lake County. So the amount of money that we're talking about is massive. And our most experienced business leaders understand that between the government agencies, the federal, state, and local government consumes roughly 50% of GDP. So if you're a business person, the government is almost always your best customer. So anyone who tries to get in between the government and your stakeholders in your community who hold government contracts, you are a target, because you are the worst enemy of the people who are manipulating the government for contracts and money. And I'll toss that back to you, Michelle.
So this actually perks my ear because it sounds a lot similar to kind of how Doge is auditing all these bureaucrats federally. It's almost like we had seen that on the local level. I know running for office real quickly, they decide, which are you going to be for us? Are you going to kind of a little bit more of a puppet? I hate to say that. Or are you going to be somebody who's going to ruffle some feathers? And they decide real quickly which side you're on. Doge has made it almost popular for the American people to understand that we do need to audit and hold our government responsible, especially unelected bureaucrats. It sounds like you think that Florida could benefit from something like that, and even our own local governments countywide.
Michelle, government is the roughest, most cutthroat game in the world.
Yeah.
Bar none. The money is enormous. The lifestyle is enormous. The public recognition is off the charts. Our leadership becomes celebrities, and it's even it's very difficult to walk away from. So I would just suggest to you, I mean, take a look at Congressman Dan Webster, longest serving public official in Florida history. He and his family know that he is beyond his best days. Everybody can have their own opinion of Dan Webster, whether they like him or not. Most people love Dan Webster. He's a long-serving Christian, public servant. But the fact of the matter is that there are people who serve the constituency better in government, and Congressman Webster just doesn't want to walk away. It's, it's too much. He enjoys it. He has built his self-perception revolves around public service. So he doesn't want to walk away from that. And I understand that, but this is the key point. Everyone in government should be concerned about our constituents. But of course, now keep in mind that government is a special interest. And then there are other special interests in every jurisdiction, whether it's a municipality, a county, the state, or the federal government. There are other special interests, and they're business people. The people running the government are business people. The people running the special interests are business people. They sit around the table and they say, how can we make this work better for both you and me? But the interesting part of it is the government is a taxing authority. They have a legal right to take our money. So when they sit around the table with special interests, they're sitting around the table with your money. Now, when you run for public office and you interview with these special interests, they ask you very specific questions. Will you support appropriations to fund my cause? Yes or no? And then we have to have most politicians want the endorsement. They want the political contribution. So, I mean, they're on the hot seat. Political candidates want to agree with special interests. But when you're sitting, like, for example, I interviewed with the Florida Chamber of Commerce, and they started asking me some questions that I knew that they wouldn't like the answer to. So I prefaced my answer with, ladies and gentlemen, I fully understand that I'm sitting in front of the Florida Chamber of Commerce. I know who you are. I know that I'm on the record right now. So don't think that I'm being naively saying these things to you. I know exactly what I'm saying to you, and this is the answer to your question. And it was amazing how refreshing it was for them. They actually enjoyed knowing that I wasn't pandering. I had the same conversation with the Florida Ag Coalition. I had the same with let's see, I always get their name, Affiliated Industries of Florida, I believe. Another big special interest group that covers multiple industries. Like, for example, the Florida Ag Coalition is an umbrella association that serves 24 agricultural associations in Florida. And all 24 of those associations had their presidents at the table when myself and other candidates who were interviewing during that interview period were there. They were very interested. This is the well-being of their industry. So this is crucial for them. But the interesting part about it is that everyday people do not have people advocating for them. I want to say one more thing before I turn it back to you, Michelle, and that is this. So in all of the counties, we have jurisdictions that are incorporated as cities or towns, and then we have other areas that are unincorporated. The cities and towns lobby for the interests of the local government, of the municipal government. People living in the county have no representation. So then you look at the relationship between cities and counties, and on a good day, you'll get a county commissioner who understands that, like, for example, in Lake County, I'm not sure how current this is, but not too long ago, 50% of the people living in Lake County lived outside of cities, municipalities. So the people that are living outside of municipalities get no representation at all. So as I said before, it's very true, very appropriate. If you're not at the table, you're on the menu. So as our state representative, yeah. So just to wrap, as our state representatives go to Tallahassee, for example, appropriations are awarded to people who lobby the government for appropriations. If you don't lobby the government for appropriations, you don't get funded. You're not on the list, right? So your tax dollars get used to support other interests. Michelle.
And this creates it sort of a closed circle that we joke. It's not a joke, but we joke about the fact that we have selections, not elections, because you really have to be completely. And I loved, you gave me an analogy during the week, Mike, and I loved it because you have such a business mindset. But, maybe you can explain it better than I can about how, you would grow a business, but you really don't want government to operate in the same way.
Exactly. And, Doge is a classic example. And yes, I think that the state of Florida needs Doge. I think that all the counties need Doge because again, let me say something. Every institution has a culture, and the culture of government is to lavishly spend other people's money. Okay. So we said people in government sit like little kings and queens, and this is a beautiful cause, and this is my friend, and they're such beautiful people, so we're going to give money to their NGO, right? Non-governmental organization. That is the mindset, right? So again, as a business person, you want to grow your business as big as you can get it, theoretically, or in most cases, and you want to be as profitable as you can. But the actual best use of government is to minimize the size of government. So here, I'll encapsulate this in a nutshell. A lot of the best businesses like Donald Trump and Elon Musk right now, they understand zero-based budgeting. If we don't need the product or service, we're not going to include it in this year's budget. Government doesn't do that. Government never cancels a program, never cancels an expense. They just lop on to whatever happened last year and then forward that into the future. And that's how America got into the trouble that we're in. And that's why our local, like, for example, when you take a look at Florida, and you look at the spiking population in Florida and the demand for housing, goods and services, all that kind of stuff, our counties and cities have more money than they've ever had, but they never look at it and say, hey, we have more money than we need. They say, how can we make the best use of this enormous amount of money? And then they find programs. They want to add more services to the set of services they're currently offering, when in reality, that money needs to go back into the economy so private sector people can grow the economy, become more prosperous, and increase the quality of life for every citizen in their jurisdiction and their constituency. Michelle?
That's so true, Mike. And I got just a few more questions for you. One thing I want to make sure we point out here, because I know this is a conversation we've had before. We are seeing here in the state of Florida, the free state of Florida, an issue within our GOP where they are excluding a lot of MAGA Republicans, people that have chosen to be a member of many different clubs and organizations throughout their counties. The one issue that we take here with this, and I know you and I agree on this, is that the Republican Party of Florida is claiming that they are a private organization. They can include whoever they want within their membership, and it's their right to determine this. But they use taxpayer funds in order to hold elections for these precinct committee men and women. What can we do, Mike? Because it feels like it's a David and Goliath moment, right? I'm caught up in this. I know you are. What can we do, and what should we do here in the state of Florida to try to push back against that?
Michelle, this has been going on. I was the chairman of the party here in Lake County in 2012. And we started producing these resolutions, right, which is a codified voice of the local party on public policy issues. Our legislators don't want to be restricted by their constituents' point of view on public policy issues. They want to go into Tallahassee and sit around the table with those special interests and be absolutely unencumbered as they decide what they're going to advance and what they're not. So this is a war. And I'm saying to you that with technology, what you're doing right now, thank you very much for having me on, this is how we win.
Yeah.
Because there's more of us than there are of them. They know for sure. It's not ambiguous. It's not a misunderstanding. They know that they're not serving our interests. And until we remove these elected officials and put people in place who will serve their constituents, who care about working families who do not participate in the process, we in America, we have been spoiled, and life in America has been pretty good, even though we weren't at the table. These elected officials know that. So the point is that for me, I talk to elected officials, Republican Party of Florida people, business people all the time. We all agree that having more information when we approach decision making is better. Yet, our elected officials don't want to learn from the intelligent opinions and knowledge base that their constituents have. So in the local RECs, when we write resolutions and study the resolutions, debate the resolutions, wordsmith the resolutions, and codify them into formal opinions of our local Republican executive committees, that should actually help our elected officials do a better job serving their constituencies. But the Republican Party of Florida, and I would suggest all the way up the food chain, doesn't want to hear it because they don't want to be burdened and restricted by the concerns of their constituents. That's a real problem. It's a fundamental problem. I would say to you that it's an existential problem, and why the United States of America is in the situation that it's in. And it's why DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency, is going to demonstrate that 50% of our discretionary spending is not necessary at the federal level. And then when we drill down into that at the state and local level, we'll find the same thing.
Absolutely. And Mike, this is why, first of all, there's no mistakes with God. I know there's a reason why we connected. And I think I jokingly say that they would have been better off giving us a seat in the legislature, because now we've just got all this free time. And I'm excited to see what moves forward, because we are waking up people, Mike. We've got people like yourself who can communicate the task at hand and how we can actually change the culture here in Florida. It's no different than the federal government. We copy and repeat right here in the state of Florida. No different than it is nationwide. Thank you so much for joining us. But I want to make sure that you can let our viewers know, where can they learn more about you? And I think you have a great Substack as well, right?
I think the best place to follow me right now is on X. So it would be x.com/@MPL_FL @MPL_FL on X.
Wonderful. Mike, this is just the beginning. We've already talked off camera. I'm excited for what's to come in the future. Thank you so much for joining us here on CCN.
It's a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.